Yeah, that was similar to mine. Yeah, there's more sandwiches here.
Pick that phone.
Cheers, that's okay.
Welcome to us all as we gather for these Hustings here at St Mary's Church in Putney. My name is John, I'm the chief rector of this church, and it's a real privilege and delight to be part of this and to give a welcome to you all. So first of all, thank you so much to the Putney Society for organising these Hustings, and obviously a very good network to get the word out that they are going on. Thank you so much to the 7 candidates. I'm aware that lots of people are getting their pound of flesh off you and you're working it hard, so you've come out for another evening. Thank you very much indeed. And clearly thank you to everyone who's come here to exercise local democracy here in a very direct way. If we need to evacuate the building, there's one fire escape through the base of the tower, one going out at the back of the church there, and then one exit away we came. And if we need lose, we can either go through the door back and turn right and you'll see them, or alternatively back into the cafe and turn left. And there's one just there. Just one last thing that I'll say about my welcome before handing over to our chair from the Putney Society, by the way. It's really good to remember that 377 years ago, here in St Mary's Church in Putney, debates went on about the nature of parliamentary democracy. The Levellers were there, the New Model Army, all sorts of different interests, but really getting to grips with important questions about governance and Westminster. And so here we are, 377 years later, not quite the same debate, but so important to be able to have these sorts of discussions. And so with that, I hand over to Jonathan, our chair for the evening.
Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jonathan Calloway on behalf of the Putney Society, and so welcome, as you just heard, to the home of the original Putney debates. This one has been organised by the Putney Society together with John Whittaker, the rector, and we are delighted to see such a large group of people here, including upstairs. I think I should just say that Putney Society, by the way, is a charity and a non-political organisation. I'll be a neutral chair this evening. I'll certainly do my best to be neutral anyway. What we have done, and I hope all of you saw this because we have been trying to advertise it, we asked for questions in advance for this evening. We had in total 38 questions. Clearly, which is great actually, it's far more than we had last time we tried this. We can't obviously go through all 38 questions because what we wish to do is have each candidate given the chance to answer each question. So it's been distilled down into 11 questions. We've got a couple of supplementaries that we feel will be continued later into the night, but the basic idea is 11 questions. So one or two of the ones that you have very kindly sent in will not make it onto the final list, and some of the others have been amalgamated because they're basically addressing the same issues. So I will explain that, and I will read the questions out. So we won't be taking questions from the floor. And some of you may wish to express an opinion when one or other of the candidates is speaking. We prefer it if you didn't, because we're here to hear the candidates, not members of the audience. Now, I'm hoping that you all know the names of the 7 candidates we've got in this election. We've got Flo Anderson from the Labour Party on my immediate right here, Peter Hunt from Reform, gentleman there, just raised his hand, Heiko Crew from the Workers' Party of Great Britain. We've got Kieran McCarthy here from the Lib Dems, we've got Thurgood McEntee from the Green Party, and we've got Lee Roberts, who, again, here on my far left, interestingly, Conservatives.
Left me, are you?
Now, what we're going to do is each of the candidates will get 3 minutes to introduce themselves and to introduce their party and what they're standing for. We have a 7th candidate who's unfortunately not able to join us this evening, which is Felix Burford Canole, Felix is not here, but he's represented by Bill Colgrave at the end there, and he represents the rejoin the EU party. And what we've agreed is that Bill will join in with the 3 minutes at the beginning. He will also join in at the very end, and he won't take part in the actual question and answer session. But he's not a candidate in this session, so I think it's full. Is that right? Hands full, so cross the river. There you go. So we're going to start with Bill. He will do his 3 minutes. You have to press the button on the microphone to make sure it's live. This thing. Yeah. It's got a green light ahead. You've got 3 minutes. So, I should say that one of my colleagues at the back here has got a big sign. I hope you can all read that. It says 15 on it. I have to tell you you've got 15 seconds because we've got to keep to strict timing as we possibly can because we've got a lot of things to get through, a lot of questions, a lot of things to deal with. So, Bill, good with you. Thank you very much.
188 was the number I got this morning for the number of languages that are spoken in this fine constituency. 188 languages. 38% of the constituents here, of the residents here, were born outside the United Kingdom. And that's what makes this place such an exciting, vibrant, interesting place to live. Just like my own constituency across the road. It is, and it's an exciting, vibrant place, much more than not just in this country, but for the whole world. You can't find many more exciting places to live. And that is one of the reasons that Brexit has been such a tragedy and a disaster for our country and for the constituency where we are. And it's a disaster. We know it's a disaster economically, but it's also a social disaster. I'll just give you a couple of quick statements as to why it's a disaster economically. The government itself estimates, and Bloomberg supports that the loss of output in Great Britain is £1,800 per resident in this country in reduction in output. The Mayor of London has done his own survey and he estimates that each person here, the average loss of income for each person in this country, in London, is £3,400 per year. And we have lost 290,000 jobs. 290,000 jobs means 4,000 in this constituency. 15% of the workforce has disappeared. Now, we know it's happened. We know it's a horror story. There's no point in blaming the people who created it. And myself, to some extent, created it. I didn't even vote if I seen it go the right way. There's no point in now blaming people, but there is a point in asking why, here in 2024, with the general election, none of the major parties are admitting it, discussing it, or working out how to solve this problem. Maybe tonight we'll hear a little bit from that. But the Labour Party keeping as quiet as they possibly can because they're worried about losing people to the Conservative Party who voted for Brexit. The Conservative Party, much the same position. Liberals don't seem to know if they're going up the escalator or down in the lift. Congratulations to the Green Party who are saying, yes, we want to rejoin the European Union. But we know we've got to get back into the European Union in order to recover our economy. They talk of 20 or 30 billion black holes in their various policy statements. We know there's 100 billion black hole they're not talking about.
Thank you very much, Bill. Right, now we're going to do this, the candidates will do their 3 minutes each, starting with the clerk, because we're going to do it alphabetical, initially alphabetical by surname, and we're going to vary that order as we go through the hustings. Fleur will start now, Paul Labour Party, 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you you to the Putney Society for hosting this evening, to you all for coming. It's fantastic to have such a huge turnout, and to John and St Mary's for hosting it here in this beautiful building as well. A thanks to everyone who voted for me 4.5 years ago, and Putney was the only Labour game. We became quite famous on that night. And thank you to everyone who I've worked with on all the different campaigns, and whether or not you voted for me, I hope that we've been able to work together to make a difference and a change in our community here. It has been an honour to serve our community for the last 4.5 years, and to be Shadow Paymaster General and Shadow Northern Ireland Minister. But I'm glad that you're here tonight to take your choice of who to vote for really seriously. A bit of background about me. I'm a vicar's daughter, so I'm very happy here in this church. I'm a local mum with 4 children. I've lived in Wandsworth for 30 years, and I started off with getting more involved in the community with a campaign to save our children's centre, to the 1 o'clock club for those who knew them, and then also a local pub. And I slowly became more involved in what was going on. I became a councillor, Wandsworth councillor for 7 years, and I ran a community centre in Battersea before becoming an MP. I was running older people's programmes and youth programmes. In my career, I worked in international development, tackling environmental crisis and campaigning for water and against inequality around the world with Christian Aid, CAFOD, Oxfam and WaterAid. I've been a hard-working MP. I've really tried to work hard. I've spoken in Parliament 657 times, including 3 debates on Hammersmith Bridge. I've asked 1,277 parliamentary questions. That's 4 times as many as the average MP. I've done 34,000 pieces of constituency casework, standing up individually for local people. In those 4 years, the Conservatives have taken us into increasing chaos. A revolving door of prime ministers and ministers, but no answers to fixing the economy, border security, the NHS, the housing crisis, skills crisis, tackling the nature and climate crisis, or skills. But I've been a campaigning MP first and foremost. I saved Queen Mary's Hospital Urgent Treatment Centre when it was closed during COVID and wasn't going to reopen. I've campaigned on cladding, a lot of it here, on saving the 14 and 74 bus routes, on stopping Fulham Pier, so saving our river clubs. I've got a national ban on plastic in wet wipes. I've campaigned for safety for women and girls and cutting crime in our area. I've campaigned for more shops on the high street, for our green spaces. I've campaigned and campaigned and campaigned for the reopening of Hammersmith Bridge, and taken up the campaign for Wimbledon Park against the All England Tennis Club. But most of all, I've been campaigning for the best opportunities, for healthy and happy lives, for us all in Putney. And I look forward to all of your questions. Thank you very much.
I should just mention, you'll see a couple of people here doing a little bit of filming. They're filming candidates rather than the audience, and I think that's the way it will stay. But they won't be filming the next candidate, and I think they know that. So the next candidate is Peter Hunter. Peter is the Reform Party, Reform UK Party, and he will be able to speak with the microphone for 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'm Peter Hunter. Thank you very much for coming this evening. It's very nice to see you all here. It's an even bigger audience. Last night, some word must have got out that were outstanding 7 speakers, not 1 or 2 which I mentioned in the line. So I am somebody in the back can't hear me. Is that all right? Can everybody hear me now? Yeah. Very good. I'm Glenda Jackson. Very good. And so I was went to school in Shropshire, but I've lived a mile away from here for 24 years, so I'm a local. I understand a lot of the local problems. When I left school, I went to Sandhurst Military Academy. I learned Russian for a year, so everybody says Russian. I'm a bit rusty, so they wanted to test me out on that. I've then been a peacekeeper around the world. I've served in the United Nations in Cyprus. I've been in Afghanistan and in several other places. I served in Northern Ireland for a while as an infantryman, and so I've been trying to bring peace to that community, which we did successfully, and now I want to be your MP. And I think it's very important that we have a change here in Putney. As you've heard from Nigel Farage's great contract, which was published yesterday, he has already acknowledged that a certain party, I won't name, is due to get a thumping majority. And so he wants to be the disruptor, and he wants to be the opposition, and he wants to be your fighter, as do I, for all of the issues like Landlord, which have been mentioned here in this constituency. So therefore, as Labour are going to get a thumping majority, of course we don't need Fleur to get re-elected, so you now have the chance for a choice, because they're going to get plenty of other MPs. So I want you to vote for me, and I look forward to hearing your questions. Thank you again for coming this evening.
Peter, you have 2 minutes. Very good. Thank you. Right, who will be our next candidate for the Workers' Party?
Okay, my name's Heiko Koo. I've been speaking at Speaker's Corner since 1985, the end of 1985. I've been involved in political life since I was 17 years of age. I'm 60 years of age now. I joined the Labour Party in 1980 and was expelled from the party with a letter last year. I've been expelled before. I was expelled when Jeremy Corbyn was first standing. They expelled me. The machine decided that I was some kind of Maoist, and then when Jeremy Corbyn won, the NEC realised that this was a pack of lies. They'd had an army of people employed to purge the party in advance of Jeremy Corbyn's victory. And then when Jeremy Corbyn, I participated in his campaign to get elected. When he got elected, I supported Jeremy Corbyn's campaign, but I noticed quite early on that he was being sabotaged. He was being sabotaged by the internal machine inside the Labour Party. And this internal machine has got links that are not really connected with the Labour movement. They're connected with big business, they're connected with state interests, they're connected with Israel, they're connected with big power interests which are opposed to the Labour movement. And we did our attempt to change the party, but unfortunately there was a coup d'etat inside the party in 2017, which Keir Starmer participated in, and many others participated in. Remember the coup? Yep. They all resigned one day. All the shadow cabinet resigned. They all like, we're out, we're finished. Jeremy Corbyn, we can't tolerate it anymore. And then Jeremy won again with a thumping majority. And I believe he made a big mistake. And his big mistake was not to call for mandatory reselection of all MPs across the whole country. In that way, we could have made the party and the mood amongst the actual activists in the party, and Labour became the biggest party in the whole of Europe during that time. 600,000 members, enthusiastic members. And actually, when Fleur stood in 2019, I saw that, what's his name, Owen Jones, he put out a tweet and he said, 700 people have turned up for canvassing in South France. Unheard of, he said. And this was, of course, the wave of Corbyn. These were the people who supported Jeremy Corbyn's ideas, coming out enthusiastically to bring members of Parliament into power and to try and defend what was an excellent manifesto, actually, in 2019. And then after Jeremy Corbyn resigned, Keir Starmer put himself forward, having sneaked himself into the leadership and played a clever, cunning, waiting game. And then he moved for the attack, abandoned every policy he stood for and attacked Jeremy Corbyn, ousted him, and then purged the party of everyone who disagrees. And then he says that's the criteria for getting elected. That's the criteria of a traitor and a saboteur of the Labour movement who is not defending the Labour movement, is defending the interests opposed to the Labour movement.
We're now going to move on to the Liberal Democrats and Kieran McCarthy, who's going to do 3 minutes starting now.
And thank you all for being here tonight. It's a real honour to be in this church and standing here as a candidate for Parliament. And I have been here in 1647 during the Putney debates. I'd have been a leveller. I'd have been one of the radicals. And I've got some radical ideas for you today. One is we shouldn't build on people's only green space. Secondly, we should open up the high street shops and fill them full of happy customers. My third radical suggestion is that we open up Hammersmith Bridge. Now, given the history of the Putney society, I imagine we can all agree that chopping down trees to make way for ill-advised construction is a bad idea. If you choose me as your Member of Parliament, I will fight for the hundreds of people whose lives will be disrupted by the Council's ill-advised housing plans. Housing plans is the thing that the Labour candidate supports. In 2018, there were 3 empty shops on Putney High Street. Today there are nearly 20. I've started up a charity called Save the High Street that is focused on opening up all of those shops. And then Hammersmith Bridge, I live just off Lower Richmond Road, so with my wife and 2 daughters, and so we deal with the traffic and the air pollution every single day. And it's been something that's been going on for 5 long years now. If you select me as your MP, I will open that damn bridge. And I won't do it by asking questions in Parliament and achieving nothing. I will do it by getting Putney behind me, and we will open it within a year. Yeah. And hold me to it. Vote for me. Hold me to it. Now we've got the, I hate to say this, but the 2 candidates, the 2 main parties here have been telling porkies recently. They've been saying it's a 2-horse race, which I think is a little insulting, seeing we've got 7 people here. They don't seem to have realised that this country's actually got a bit sick of the usual political ping pong. So here's my pitch for you. Look at your neighbours. Look at Richmond, look at Twickenham, look at Kingston, and look at what will happen in Wimbledon. They've all elected Lib Dem MPs, and they've all elected Lib Dem councils. So what I recommend to you, for a better Putney, is to elect a Lib Dem MP for here, and that would be me this time around, Kieran McCarthy. Thank you.
Thanks very much for Kieran. We have got the Green Party who will introduce himself and his party's policy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Putney Society, for inviting us here today to talk about news, education, forum.
Sorry.
It's an extra 5 seconds. Yeah, so it's, I started 4 years ago, 5 years ago, for the Greens here at Putney, and delighted to be back here today. And this time, like last time, I had a warning about humanity and where we're actually going. We're speaking about the levelers nearly 400 years ago. 400 years' time, estimated that probably London will be underwater, right? Thames Barrier has to be rebuilt in 20, 30 years' time because it's not fit for purpose. We've had 2022, since the last election, we've had 40.3 degrees in the UK. These temperatures weren't supposed to happen for another 20, 30 years. Okay, recently, we've just had record rainfall that's actually destroying crops here in the UK. If you go into the media, we've got floods in Mexico, we've got fires in Arizona, we've got floods in China, we've got heat waves now killing people in Greece, and we're at 1.5 degrees of warming. The latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, which is the most scientifically written document in human history, authored by 265 authors, going through 18,000 peer-reviewed scientific papers, say if we don't change course in the next few years, we're going to have an unlivable planet, right? So that's the start warning. I'm just going to tell you, anyone who's got children, grandchildren, need to be thinking about the future. It's so serious that's what's actually happening. You've got in the UK, you've got scientists who are going out protesting, getting arrested. You've got doctors who are going out, getting arrested. So people who understand the level of actually urgency are actually doing something about it. That's why I'm standing. I'm a renewable engineer. I crunch numbers. I understand the difficulties to get to net zero. We've actually signed up for the joint science. It's like a science movie. What we've actually agreed to do is to actually build giant machines to suck carbon out of the atmosphere to give us a chance to save humanity. And that's so we can continue flying for the next 20, 30 years. Okay, so I'm just here to give you a warning, and also, Green Party has some pretty good policies to tackle housing, cost of living crisis, the NHS, a little bit about me. I moved here actually 9 years ago. My partner, who's from Putney, works in Putney, so I have to say Putney. And when I first came here, the thing that really got me was the air quality. And what I did, I actually went and blocked the A3, and that got public notice, and that actually got things into newspapers and people talking about it. So if you vote for me, I will take action. I will continue taking action. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Fiona. That was very refreshing. That's the right we should now move on to Lee Roberts, the Conservative candidate, as I said, down the end here.
Hello.
And he will speak for 3 minutes.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us here this evening, greatly appreciated. Just a few things about me, hope you can hear me. I'm Lee, originally born in Walsall, West Midlands, industrial town. Came to London after university, stayed educated, state grammar school, then got to Oxford after hard work there and discovered politics that way. So I got involved in the Oxford Union, the Oxford Conservative Association, then came to London and did no more politics. So this is my first time really going for a public office as an MP. So I'm new to this, wearing a learner plate. What I can promise you is passion, experience, and a background in getting things done. My trade has been advertising marketing. I was in radio, in commercial radio, on the advertising sales side. LBC Capital then helped to launch Virgin Radio, made it very quickly in the next few years the UK's most successful national commercial station, then joined a new startup called AEG, which was backing the franchise to take over the Millennium Dome, the white elephant left by the last Labour administration that was going nowhere. We worked hard with big ideas and big vision, and we turned that within a few years, actually 2 years, into the world's most successful music venue. And it's that sort of passion, energy, enterprise and focus I would like to deliver here in Putney. The things that people who've never worked in a real business, like Kieran, talk about, is great, it's all talk. I have a track record of getting things done, and I'll do it for you. That's my promise. So outside of that, I started my own business. I work for entertainment and media companies, and also for retail and property companies, and also environmental startups like this one here. I put this on COP26 as the only British company, startup British company, as the official drink of COP26. So I take things and make them effective and successful. I'm now devoted to politics. I'll be devoted for you in making Putney successful in all the things we talked about. I'm not a career politician. I promise I'll work for you above any party interest. And that's my plan. I also sit on the board of the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo. So I work with veterans, generating over £1 million a year from that event for military charities. So again, the background is making things happen, being effective for you. In terms of politics, I look at what's happening now. We're all very angry for obvious reasons. We've been through COVID, lots of change, inflation being high. I see a party which is turning things round for you, with big success in the economy coming up. I'm worried about turning that away for a party that takes us back to the 1970s, with higher inflation again, higher unemployment as the Labour always give us, and also nationalised industries which never drive growth. That's a concern. And also, as a final pitch, if, as the polls say, we have a Labour royal flush of a Labour government with a big majority, a Labour council, a Labour mayor, and a Labour MP, who's going to stand up for you? Monopolies are never good. Never good. I promise you to be the pain in the arse of Putney that gets us results. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We'll hold you to that. Right. Now we're going to move on to the questions now. I've got, as I said, we've selected 11. Some of these are merged questions. phone or something in the background. If anyone's got
Sorry.
a phone that's on, can they turn it to silent? There is something which is keeping away in the background, and it's really wrong when you have that. Oh, right, okay, it's a fire alarm, nothing to worry about. We'll try to ignore it, guys, if we can't switch it off. I think we're going to start with questions. And the very first one, it will start right here, and it's about high street regeneration. Now, the high street in Putney is constantly full of traffic, as we know, with many empty and abandoned shops. How will the candidates aim to improve our high street? Will your party support small businesses in Putney that are currently under threat from high business rates and increasing rents? So we're going to take this, and we're going to do this now by order of first name. So first off will be first. Thank you. And you've got to make it 1 minute.
1 minute, right, I'll have to grab into 1 minute. Yeah, it's absolutely disgraceful, these empty properties in the high street. It's, what we need to do is we need to change the law on business rates, that if a property is empty, we need to actually be increasing the fine on the overseas landowners and businesses that actually own the majority of these buildings. We need to bring them back into use for our community. People want to be able to use shops. They should be given discounts. At the same time, they should be given local grants. Brixton did a very good scheme in Brixton Market. We gave them 6 months free rent to get them up and running. And at that time, if they're able to up and run, then they would pay rent. And now Brixton Market is actually driving as Brixton Village. I introduced something very similar to the high street and get rid of fire owners and actually fine them for having buildings empty. Thank you.
Thank you. You're next. On the high street.
Thank you. It's vitally important that we save and champion our high street. I've been working a lot with Putney Bid, Positive Putney, and also with some of the landlords who don't open up their shops but have their premises on our high street. The council doesn't have the powers to take this on, so I've been lobbying for a change of the law so that the council would have more powers over landlords to say you have to open up the shops. There are high streets, you shouldn't leave them empty. And I'm glad that that is in the Labour Party manifesto, that we would revamp empty shops, pubs and community places with a right to buy and council powers to open up shops on our high street. That's what we need for Putney. Labour would also replace business rates, which is something that retailers bring up all the time, with business property taxation, and rebalance online giants with retailers, because it's out of kilter at the moment. We would stamp out late payments to help those small businesses on the high street and tackle shoplifting, which is such an issue. But on the high street, to reopen Hammersmith Bridge actually is one of the answers as well, to reduce pollution and make it more of a pleasant retail environment. So all of those things are a package which we need, but it needs to be nationally level, and I will champion that. I have done already, and I will continue to champion that, and champion our high street. Thank you.
Without giving the entire game away, Huntsman might come up later. Right, next up is Heiko. Once again, it's just a single minute.
Yeah, I think that shops, when they're empty, should be requisitioned. There should be no rates on those shops for a period of time in which small businesses can develop those shops, or cooperatives can develop those shops. And they should be the type of shops in modern times which constitute something different. Something different means artisanal, community, people-led initiatives that allow people to create something flourishing and different. And something different brings you to the high street. You don't go to the high street to see the same shops all the time, everywhere. That's the Americanization of the mall-type society everywhere in the world. And those places that are successful, Notting Hill Gate, the marketplace in Camden, the marketplace in Brixton, those are genuine, thriving areas that bring people in. And to be honest, Putney lacks anything like that. I was just walking down the street here, there's a building there on the high street, big building, and it's got a sign up, Ambrica in the window. I don't know if you're familiar with these things, but these things are called guardian companies. And the guardian companies basically have used this gap in the law. They get control over buildings, they cut the rates that are paid to central government, or to local government and central government, split between the two, And then they rent out on slum landlord conditions to people and put them in there. The building opposite, the pub opposite, the blacked out building, that's run by a company called Oakshaw. They do exactly the same thing. That's been empty for years, packed out with people in a slum landlord condition. Nothing's done about it. They're not even legal.
Thank you. So Kieran McCarthy now will do his 1 minute.
So, the building with the Guardian tenants, the Star and Garter has been turned into a hotel and finally got permission to do it. The building that is blocked up, that's the White Lion. The White Lion will have a lease, hopefully, with my charity in the next couple of months, but we will open it, we will bring in communities. The Marks and Spencer's building, I lined up 3 charities, or children's charities, 3 CEOs, they want to get into that building. Unfortunately, the head of the state's Marks and Spencer's wants nothing to do with it. He says the roof needs to be fixed and there's damage inside. I offered a crowd fund to remove the, what he says, the dangerous stuff inside. He said no, he doesn't want to do it. How do you fix the high street? You don't keep talking, you actually do. I'm actually doing, okay? How do you do it? You have a charity that takes on the lease, you bring in local business people, you give them an opportunity to build, then if it works, if people come in, local businesses, then you give them a grant and you set them up. That's how you build a high street. You talk to the people. Now, I love positively Putney, they're doing a great job, but what they need on their board is they need people from the community to say what they actually need on the high street. And what they do currently, and I don't call them, they do it well, is they talk to the current businesses and they try and get foot traffic. That is not going to get people into those shops. You need to get people into those shops. I've started work on it, and I wish the politicians would stop talking about it and actually do something. Thank you.
Another stretch minute there. Lee, 1 minute.
Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. This is my area in terms of what I understand, and the only person that's got close to the right solution here, I think, is Hopkins, which is interesting actually, because we're not really natural allies, as you can tell. He talked about demand. He talked about creating demand and points of difference. Look, everything's been said by Flo is true. That has to be done, agreed, but it won't help Putney any more than anywhere else. I look at this as an entrepreneur, and this is a fantastic opportunity. Your riverside location, see it once here with the boat with the boat race, fantastic, but we're not making enough use of it. We have a natural farmers market location here. We've already started working on this. I love the charity idea, bless him, it's great, but this is about business. This is about making money for you, all of us. Let's create a world-class farmers market on that Thames Tideway area. That would be a beacon then to bring in super big, so that's where we disagree, the super big business, the BlackRocks of this world, to redevelop parts of the high street, to make this the foodie capital of London. That's my plan.
Both nationally and locally, you will have heard from Nigel that he has one of the main planks in our priorities is to support the 5 million small business owners that exist, not just here in Putney, but across the country. So we will, as one of our main things, concentrating on supporting them. You mentioned lower rates, lower taxes, encouragement, and we will do all of that. And similarly, I will support the Liverpool member with his local initiatives and his charity, because he's already doing good work. Why try and reinvent the wheel? So we need to work hard with the local authority to force them to help us to help you.
Right, well, the next question, it's actually 3 questions in one. It does cover transport, so we are back to Hammersmith Bridge. So the 3 questions are, firstly, the funding of the reopening of Hammersmith Bridge. Who's going to pay? Will the candidates lobby for the next government to pay a share alongside TfL and Hammersmith Council? We all know the effects of that to the traffic jams that you have to suffer here. The second part of the transport question is about aircraft noise restrictions. What are your policies on that? Nobody's in favour of aircraft noise, but we all have to live with it. What are you proposing to do about it? And then thirdly, and you haven't got very long for these, I know, low traffic neighbourhoods, are you for, are you against? Do you want more of them? Do you want fewer of them? And you've got 1 minute. And we're going to
30 seconds.
33 seconds each. Oh, anyway, no, it's not.
20.
It's 30 seconds.
20.
20, thank you. I was a banker, but I am okay, we're going to do this. Lee's going to go first. Here's a minute on transport.
Right, thanks. Really quickly then, the bridge. We've all talked for a long time. Fresh approach. This has to be TfL taking charge here because TfL already managed 6 bridges. TfL traditionally have managed the maintenance for 85% of that, and that's Hammersmith and Fulham's own website saying it. So the mayor has to take charge. The mayor's very deflecting things, getting Fleur to say, oh, it's the government to do it. Now I say, has Rachel Reeves in the manifesto said she'll back it? No, she hasn't. This has to be TfL. Aircraft noise, let's lobby against that. That's a clear concern. I'm here to represent Putney. If Putney says no to that, I will back it all the way and stop that. LTNs, we need to have only LTNs when the population there wants it, and also a wider group that use the area and use those roads also have to be in support of that. That's important. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. There is no shame in ending early, by the way. So further to you on the transport questions.
Yeah, look, Hammersmith Bridge is actually open. It's been open for the last couple of years. Lots of cyclists and pedestrians walking across every day. We're pretty happy. Big picture here. It's not about one bridge. It's about the fact that we've got a chock-a-block city full of cars. We don't need cars. Paris is going through a process of actually getting rid and closing roads. And the roads along the same. It's 7-8 kilometres, open to pedestrians and cyclists, and they're making it a cycling city. We need to do the same here in London. We need to get people out of cars onto cheap, reliable public transport, safe cycling routes and safe walking routes. And about air traffic, we just need to decrease the amount of flights we have. We're going to be close to a climate emergency. Something's going to give pretty soon. So, and funding 400 million for Hammersmith Bridge. If we've invested that into low traffic neighbourhoods, educate people, we'd be like Amsterdam. And that's what we need to be doing. We need to be making our streets safer for our kids and for everybody to use. Thank you.
So who will fund Hammersmith Bridge when it finally gets fixed? It will be central government. Mr. Businessman here doesn't know what he's talking about. The 85% is when you fix it up. The issue we have is that the councils own some of the bridges. And it's historic. What Paris does is it actually has the city of Paris owns all the bridges, and money is put in, and engineers are in charge of that, and that's why Parisian bridges are so good, and why our bridges are falling down. The 7 bridges that
Six.
wrongly refers to as, actually they're not all TfL, they're actually City of London runs the best runs one. TfL cannot afford to take on all the bridges. It's central government, and that's just what's going to happen. So when it happens, you can apologise to us all. How do you get it open? You push. Everybody here needs to push. The problem is it's become a political battle between the Conservative-run central government and the Labour-run council. That's why it hasn't opened. That's the problem. Now, aircraft noise, I live just along here. It's incredibly noisy. You cannot be a third runway. Heathrow would be impossible. Plus, of course, the green it's a nightmare. And then LTNs, I'm actually in favour of it. Getting down to 20 miles an hour saves an enormous number of people's lives every year. It's just a fact. I do think that Khan messed up very badly with the expansion and he tried to bring it in too fast, and he should have done it as they did the original expansion over 3 years rather than 6 months. That's why everybody was so angry about it. Thank you.
First, Hammersmith Bridge. It seems to me that some countries are able to build bridges whenever they want. Vast bridges. I mean, I've been in Hong Kong that built bridges 20 miles long, another 20 miles long. Just one after another after another. And Britain doesn't seem able to do the most simple things. You could bring in, if the army want to build a bridge, they will go there and build a bridge within 3 weeks. Well, we've got a friend over here who's been in the military. He said within a week they could build a bridge. On the side, it's not as though there isn't a side around Hammersmith Bridge. You could build a bridge around the side of it to immediately resolve the problem. And then you can deal with the whole conservation issue of the bridge itself. So that's my view on the bridge. I've got 15 seconds left. I don't believe in low traffic neighbourhood zones. I think that there's a war against car drivers, an unjustified war, being launched by tech companies who want to make billions out of child labour in the Congo, manufacturing electric cars which are not actually green but are poisoning the atmosphere and destroying the earth.
So as the ex-army man, I'm beginning to say in terms of the brick of the week, but there are things we do. It still has to be a government and TfL problem to sort out the bridge. But we could lay another bridge over the top so that we should be open for a while until the government decides how to fund it and what to do. Secondly, air pollution, I agree, the third runway at Heathrow is a bad idea. I'm afraid being in support of you, locally, the aeroplanes go straight over the top of me, starting at 4:30 in the morning. I'm not meant to take that early, so we should be tackling that problem. I'm afraid we should move it up to Gatwick, which would be much better and well served by the railways. And can't remember the other question. Exactly. So I'm afraid I'm against them, but I am a supporter of bicycles. So it's a difficult thing, but we should not have sleep cars more on the motorists, which is very expensive. And actually, you know, if you're only getting 20 miles an hour, you're using more fuel, you're making more congestion and pollution. So I'm against that too.
I've got 30 seconds. I've been absolutely raising the issues, the chaos faced by us in Putney because of the impact of Hammersmith Bridge constantly in Parliament. The Conservatives have had 5 years to fix this, standing outside Hammersmith Bridge saying they'll fix it, and they really haven't. The Liberal Democrats, also Sarah Olney, she has absolutely done her best, but she's not been able to fix it within a year, so I don't know how Kieran will manage to do that. The funding is soared since it was closed. It was 60, then 120 million, now 240 million pounds it will cost to renovate that bridge. So it is obviously a government issue, and it's a national embarrassment that it's not being fixed. And the proposal by Hammersmith and Fulham Council was written with the Department for Transport, has been with the Department for Transport since December 22, nothing from the government. Aircraft noise, I've given detailed responses on night flights, especially opposing night flights, and I totally oppose the third runway. You can see more on my website. On low traffic neighbourhoods, I brought in the 20 mile an hour limit across Wandsworth when I was a councillor, and I championed that. I championed more school streets. I've held public meetings in which we've detailed what we need on specific changes on our streets around Putney High Street, and we've given that to the council, and we're seeing that come in, and I support school streets as well. I can say so much.
Thank you very much to all the candidates for being very, very good on timekeeping. We do want to get through all these 11 questions. So the next one really is about council services. In the eyes of many council tenants, in particular, council services are deficient, particularly communication with housing officers. And there's been several questions on this, by the way. The maintenance of council properties, cleaning, parking issues, shortage of space, non-residents parking on the estates when they shouldn't be, abandoned cars. So there's a lot of issues. How will candidates support residents in addressing these problems, which obviously are the responsibility of the council, not our MP, but nevertheless the MP can influence these things. So that's the question. We're going to take these in a different order once again, and we're going to start off with Peter. And we'll talk about these councils.
Thank you very much. When I become your MP, I will obviously split my time equally between national issues and all the more important local issues. Parking, rented cars, and everything else are crucial issues. Is there a crucial interest to you and to everybody? We want safety for children, but also we want to be fair to the motorists, and also we want to make sure the business and everybody can get around easily, quickly, and safely. Parking is a perennial problem everywhere, and so we need to look at that in more detail. I'm against building lots of new buildings, but we do need more parking, which means that new buildings must have parking everywhere.
Yes. Well, I've seen, talking at first hand with people, how this council treats its individuals and residents. I'm concerned, for example, about the way that they've been taking residents for granted and inflicting upon the most awful infill plans to build across estates in West Putney. This is all down to one thing. What's driving all this is an obsession they've got with ideology, with cancelling the autumn regeneration, because that then robs them of over 1,000 houses to build. They're dashing before the next election to build as fast and as ruthlessly as they can on residents' land, which has been successful communities for many, many years, has been pushed away. I think the council should spend more time worrying about mould, worrying about old kitchens, worrying about old bathrooms, and invest in that. Now, they've borrowed £450 million, almost £500 million. The interest will be colossal on that as time goes by, and it's being inflicted right now on the tenants and the leaseholders. And if they get a second term, it'll go on the council tax. And we're going down the same route as Croydon and Birmingham. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's the third, fourth Hustings been, and I finally find something to agree with Leon, so this is a good day. It's true. The what he's saying about the housing and the plan to council plan. Some of the plans, they're putting on these huge skyscrapers, the Labour Council, and you say, well, people say, well, how on earth are you going to fit all the cars in? And they say, oh no, those buildings won't be allowed cars. That's the plan. The plan is that people just won't have cars, which of course we all know, and all the estates know, is complete nonsense. In his gardens, you're going to lose your car park and your storage. Toland Square, they're going to lose their community centre, and how they're going to pile the cars in there is completely beyond me. It's total madness. Now, what Lee forgets to mention is for 44 years prior to that, the Conservatives ran the council, and they did an absolutely appalling job at housing. What they did was they went for the private landowners, and they gave very small amounts of social housing. That put us in the bad position we are in. Where I criticise the Labour Council is they're trying to do too much, too fast. What we really need is a stabilising influence in between the two to stop lurching from one to the other, and that would be a lot of Lib Dem councils. Thanks.
I think councils should be democratically controlled, not just controlled by bureaucrats and businesses who are lobbying officials full-time. You have people, I've been involved in various council campaigns in councils, particularly in Southwark area, and basically big businesses come in, lobby the council officials who hide behind, smart suits and their office power, and then they manipulate the tenants to do what they want. And if the tenants reject something, then they just keep coming back and back and back again and again and again, persuading them, buying off a few people, pushing some people one way, pushing people another way in order to get their way. Then they bring in a few consultants. If a tenants committee rejects what they say, then they have another consultant group come and investigate the tenants committee. And in that way, the people are disempowered. I believe people need to be empowered to take control over their lives. And if that means they want the mould removed and they set their priorities as to what they want, then they hold meetings, discuss these things, and compel councillors to do what they want. And if the councillors don't do what they want, remove them from office and elect others.
For 7 years, I've never been the kind of MP to say there are council issues and I won't deal with any of them, and then there are things in Parliament. I very much get involved in working with people to solve issues that make a big difference to their daily life. Antisocial behaviour is one of those, tackling that, really taking up people's cases, and domestic violence is another, and that's intimately related to where you live. Repairs of households. After 44 years of Conservatives, I found something to agree with Kieran on. Then many council services were really run down, and the new Labour Council is working to address that by employing far more people to fix the repairs that are needed in houses, and a record investment in our pavements and roads. So if you've got pavements that you want to be fixed, get onto your councillors and get onto the council. Tackling fly tipping is really important. You've got to really like where you live and see it as a beautiful place. And if we can tackle that's really important, parking the back of vehicles as well. But mould is something that came up so many times recently, and if I go to local schools, that head teachers say this is their biggest issue. So I've taken that up in Parliament, I've brought in my own private amendments bill on tackling mould, and it's now in the Labour Policy Manifesto, how we will deal with mould in homes, that's social housing and private rented sector as well. So I get very involved, but I also take the issues into Parliament to get national change.
Thanks for that. Now finally we're going to get further on this. This is on the general issues of council services, not the specifics of government.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago I spent a lot of time off at the Bolton estate and about regeneration that was going on there. And speaking to local residents and going around the houses, and it just seemed that it was like it was an actual decision to let the estate be run down and not do any repairs. It looked like it was a strategy so they could start forcing people to be decanted. And also, they didn't listen to local people. What we need to do is we need to bring democracy back to citizens' assemblies, people assemblies. Moving to the future, we're going to have so many issues. And if we can't get basic things like housing right, and repairs right, and small things like fly tipping, we're not going to have a chance in the future. And we need to reintroduce bus routes to stop people having to rely on private cars. And we need to also, I haven't got very much time. Yeah, and for fly tipping as well, we need to have better services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Most questions on, in fact, I counted 7 questions on this topic. This is it's about infield developments that the council has been supporting or proposing. And it's very clear, I think it's clear to all of us, that there's a significant housing shortage in the country, in the borough, and it does need to be urgently tackled with more affordable and especially social housing. How will candidates tackle this, but also where will this housing actually be located? The council plans for infill development on the Ashburton estate, particularly in its gardens, which is a very current one, strongly opposed by many residents. What actions would the candidates take to support residents in their opposition to these plans and other infill developments which the council is proposing? So it's quite a broad issue, but it is specifically on the issue of infill developments and the need for housing somewhere. And we're going to start with Scott.
Thank you. There is it's been a huge issue for the last year since the council came up with some of the plans. Actually, it didn't come up with some of those plans. They were Conservative plans to build more housing, which we do need in our area. There's a record and increasing numbers of people living in temporary accommodation, effectively homeless, and needing those new homes. But where are those homes going to be? Are we going to let them be anywhere else, or are we going to make sure we have local homes that are really high standard, that local people have the first choice of living in as well, so that local families in Putney have the chance of their children living in Putney, not having to move out? And then higher standard homes for disabled families as well. All of those things we need in Putney. So I have been going along to all the consultations on these, looking at the plans. There have been changes to them. They've reduced in size, they've changed in place, they've added in community spaces, which with the councillors we've been arguing for a lot that should be in there, and more and better playgrounds for all ages. These developments have got to also impact in the whole estate for all the residents of those estates, not just those people who need the homes. So it needs to be done in consultation with local people. There's a lot more to go on this, there's a long way to go, they haven't all gone to planning yet, and I will be continuing to listen to local people and feed all of those concerns, as well as what everyone wants for their estate, into the council as well.
Thank you very much. Slightly stretched, nearly there. Right, next one is Peter. Peter, would you like to talk about the housing issues?
Housing issues, again, are a very critical local problem, but they're also a national problem, so it has to be tackled both by the government and by the local authorities and by the local MP. So as your local MP, I will also take a very close interest in the various proposals that have been put forward at the moment and the effect that they will have. I'm afraid I have to mention the wider problem that Nigel has been banging on about, but part of the housing problem is caused by the uncontrolled illegal immigration. And that was something that we have a big 2 billion in the last 2 years. So the government needs to do something about that.
I'm in agreement that the issue is national. There are, what we need is rent controls, strict rent controls to be enforced by council officers who would come around and impose them. Second thing, we need to make an inventory of all the empty buildings in all the constituency, as well as across the whole of the city. We can start with the constituency and then requisition those buildings and turn those buildings either into housing or into things that are used for the community. As to regard council house building, I believe that the programme should be launched on a nationwide basis to make sure that every person at 8 years of age is guaranteed a council flat at 18 years of age, and a council flat at low rent with permanent tenancies. We need to return to society where people have stability in their lives, based on cheap housing, based on quality housing, and then the rest of the society will follow from that. The community life follows from that, instead of people constantly moving from one place to another.
Talk 100 miles an hour, but you've only got 1 minute to get a lot out. It's quite hard. The solution is to treat people with respect first and foremost, and that's not what happens. You're not treated with respect, and that creates a lot of problems. The Conservatives didn't treat people with respect when they came up with these housing plans, and Labour didn't treat them with respect when they dusted them off and said, oh, it's okay, there will now be 100% housing, so it's fine. It's still the same building, taking up their space, still the same building, like the holy grass, still the same building displacing their playground. It's ridiculous. Innes Gardens, Hayward Gardens, Toland Square, I mean, you can go on and on. Lennox Estate, a huge skyscraper, these are all terrible plans. And the reason that they're happening at all is because it's the cheapest option for the council, because they already own the land, and because they're trying to produce them as fast as possible, so they don't have too long before the next election. What needs to happen is you need to have people thinking medium and long term, not constantly short term. Then we will come up with a decent plan that doesn't disrupt people's lives, that produces houses that people want, and you figure out where they are running over, you figure out where they need to go. Thanks.
Housing infill of estates is not the answer. What we need to do is we need to start building high quality, low carbon, energy efficiency houses. The Green Party proposed to build 150,000 per year to ease the housing crisis in London. That's what we've got, is a housing crisis. Also, we need to tackle empty buildings, empty properties. I said it last time, I was an empty property officer for years, and one of the places I knocked on the door, a Saudi family, and they own 108 buildings, 108 properties in London, all of them empty. Right? We've got the same thing happening here in Battersea, these ghost estates that are getting built. It's supposed to be affordable housing. Every time a developer builds a housing in these private developments, and what they do is they keep on squeezing and squeezing and making them smaller and smaller, and affordable is like 400,000 or 500,000. It's not affordable. We also need to bring in rent controls as well for renters, and stop Section 21 evictions. We've just been evicted, so I'm very bitter about that. Thank you.
This is the most passionate thing I feel about, because everybody deserves a great environment to live in. And what's been proposed is appalling, so I'm absolutely with you right the way through. It's the first thing I'll do if I'm elected, to stop taking this on and stopping it. Just quickly, I'm a historian, that's what I was taught at university, and I go back to source materials. So when I heard the stuff that Kieran was talking about, I went back and did my homework, I looked at all the data. The ideas were brought out in 2017, not by the Conservatives, by civil servants, planning officers. That's their job to do, to come up with ideas all the time. I checked it out. In 2017 they were proposed, the Conservatives rejected it. Number one, that's true. That's on record, that's true. Number two, in 2020 they were revived. There was a plan put forward to put an extra level on the top of Innes Gardens. That was proposed by the housing officer, Councillor Jonathan Cook, who's a Battersea councillor. He was opposed vehemently by Putney, Conservative, West Putney, Sevi Suitors, because the people on the estate didn't want it. So the policy we had was to look at ideas, but only pursue them, this is key, only pursue ideas when you have the people with you. Labour don't know that. They're pushing ahead regardless. Worse still, they're proposing ideas which are badly thought through. The cost of each unit in that Lennox Tower is £450,000 per unit, and there's no land cost involved either. You could get a place in Battersea Power Station for that. So one solution is go to the private sector where there are empty units and use that. The council can buy that for cheaper than building it. So there are lots of solutions, not just running ahead and building on Lennox or building on Ashburn. This is a classic example of not thinking very creatively, which Labour do all the time.
Finally on this issue, the Putney Society, by the way, is a society of Putney and Roehampton. We've got a question from one of our members in Roehampton. This question is, how will the candidates support the regeneration of Roehampton? Have they forgotten that part of the borough? I don't believe people in Roehampton should be treated differently just because it's seen by some people as a lost cause. So we're going to talk now about Roehampton. We've got a minute each, and we'll start with Fiona.
So I stood as a councillor in Roehampton and got to meet a lot of local residents and talk about the regeneration and so on. It just seems it's been a political football between Labour and Conservatives and like how it's been dealt. And the most important thing that we're still missing is actually engaging with people who live there and asking them what they want. Some of the plans that put in place are knocking down local services, not replacing them, people getting decanted. They don't have choice. And again, the fact that the estate has been allowed to degenerate is a reflection on how now Labour and the Conservatives before that were actually running and treating the people in the estates, which is absolutely awful. So we need to get local people feeding into the council of what they want to happen to their own estate, and you have to listen to them. Thank you.
I feel really passionately about Roehampton, and I'm really glad that the Putney Society has changed its name to Putney and Roehampton, and is really taking an active responsibility on that as well. They're really following through. One of the reasons I stood as an MP actually was to stand up for Roehampton, and I have done that time and time again in Parliament. I've been round to all the houses that would potentially be affected by the old plans, the Conservative plans for the regeneration, which were predominantly for private housing, very high buildings, and not a whole plan for the area. This has been talked about since the Clapham riots back so long ago. This has been talked about, and the community feels really let down that they still haven't had the regeneration they need. I'm adamant, and I'm working with the councillors to make sure that Roehampton gets the investment that it's been promised. And there are new plans which are far better, that will be done in consultation with everyone on the estate, which have homes, shops, community spaces, health spaces, and transport seen as a whole plan. And I'm looking forward to discussing those with residents over the coming months, and there will then be a ballot on whether or not they go forward with that. And I think this is the right plan for the Alton, and I'm looking forward to working with the whole community to make sure that it becomes an even more fantastic place to live with equal opportunities for everyone on the estates.
Thank you.
I've only really had dealings in Roehampton about 2015. I was sent over there by Jeremy Corbyn's team to make a film about housing and regeneration. And essentially what people wanted was refurbishment of their estate. They didn't want things knocked down, they didn't want things changed, they liked their community, but it was being left to rot. And that's the case all over the country. But they were trying to make alliances with different council campaigns across the country, where basically big corporations were using councils as mechanisms to squeeze resources out of the government. And that's the truth of the matter, right across the country, and right across the different spectrums of national resources are just being transferred and siphoned off to the private sector. And basically people need to have control over their lives, which means engagement, such as you have today at this meeting. That's the type of level of engagement you need on a consistent basis to overturn decisions. An MP can't do that. An MP can only, if you like, appear temporarily to campaign for something, and then they've got 100 other things they've got to do. So it's all the MP can do is add a face to support you, but I would certainly do that.
Yeah, so Roehampton is an embarrassment for an otherwise wonderful Putney, frankly. I mean, Fleur's putting a very rosy picture. All you have to do is read the reports that are being produced that ask the people in Roehampton how they feel about how things are going. You just have to read, you can download them and read them. No one does, the councils don't, I do. They're furious. They've been treated appallingly for 20 years. And they're treated appallingly and they're still not being treated very well at all by them. They're not being there. One of the most consistent complaints is we have these consultations, nobody listens to us, then the next consultation comes up and it's the same thing as last time, but with a few tweaks here and there. It's appalling. The playgrounds there are rotting, and every time there's a huge fuss, they get a new playground, but they don't fix the buildings. The buildings are starting to fall apart. A friend of mine, Phil, in the 70s, he used to live there. He said people would literally bust in from other countries to go and see the Auckland State. It was the state of the future. It's been left to rot, and it's an embarrassment. And Labour should be embarrassed at the very slow pace that they're going on this, and the fact that they're not listening. It really is appalling, and Roehampton residents have a right to be furious, frankly.
Thanks. I mean, hearing Fleur talk about this is a great example of why you shouldn't have a Labour MP and a Labour council at the same time, because there's no scrutiny there. And look, I'll be honest with you. Always, this has been a problem for a long time, and we had the autumn regeneration plan. It was a plan to make things better. It would have made things better. It wasn't perfect. I spent time with Miriam going around here a few months ago. Had a fantastic time. Thank you for that. And I can see where the plan needed to change. So I'm prepared to be critical about my own party always. I want to be independent on this one and see where we can make things better. But I've got to say, Labour, this is not your finest hour. You cancelled it for pure ideology. What did you then do? You left it to sit there. You brought in expensive consultants from my old place, Landlord. People have been censured by the Ombudsman. You paid £115,000 for 13 weeks' work, a lot of money, and nothing happened. You did some consultations, and no one talked about the money that was being spent. What we see now is the whole thing being reset, more money being spent on expensive Labour consultants, jobs for the boys and girls. Not good. This needs to be put right back, get it started again as it was before, and stop the infield programme and get Alton sorted with the plan we had before. Thank you.
Well, usually I have to agree with the Conservatives. The Labour have not done well, and there is a problem. You have a Labour man, Labour government in the past, so I need to consider those problems. The secret to all of this is, as been mentioned by everybody, local consultation, but not only just hearing, but also doing and putting into effect what are the wishes of the local people. And so I think that's the important thing here, and we need to work more closely and spend less on consultants.
We're going to change topic somewhat now, and we have three questions on this, and this is all related to the cost of living, which is a huge issue for many, many people. Specifically, childcare costs are crippling many families. Mortgages and rents are climbing steeply, while poverty and child malnourishment are climbing. How will you help address these problems? And specifically, do you support the removal of the two-child benefit cap? So this year we're going to start this with Lee, please. 1 minute on cost of living.
Okay, well, cost of living, first thing is, this has affected the whole world, and it's now come down. It's come down for a number of reasons, partly this government, mainly the global economy coming down. So I think we are over the worst of this issue. The key thing now as a government is we have to push forward growth and also get interest rates down. Now, before, and let's play bingo on this one, before Fleur mentions Liz Truss crashed the economy, which you always do, I have to say to you that the interest rates were going up before Liz Truss came in, right? And every single country in the world has suffered by higher interest rates, including, by the way, Poland, which is a couple of points ahead of us. And last time I looked, Liz Truss had nothing to do with Poland. So this interest rate increase is a global phenomenon. It can come down now if we just keep control of the economy and get growth back in place. In terms of the two-child cap, that's a longer issue. We need more time on that to discuss. But I'm clearly concerned about anything which will stop people feeling free and give them an issue about how they look at their weekly benefits and weekly budgets. But the key thing is this government has got inflation down now. It's got growth going up. This is a good sign. Don't throw it away and give it to Labour.
On the cost of living.
Yeah, we'll move again. Yeah, 100% remove the cap on the two-child. It's ridiculous. The quickest way to bring children out of poverty is to give them all equal rights, and it's only going to cost $6 billion. The amount of money that's wasted on other things, we can surely find that in the budget. So that's one thing that please definitely support. Talk about growth. We can't have continuous growth of finite planet. We have to have a selected type of growth. Best thing we can do is actually reinvest in the UK. We spend £1.1 billion a day leaves this shore on hydrocarbons, which is fossil fuels owned by dodgy petrol states that support wars. Right? 400 billion a year. If we had renewable energy, if we invested in home insulation, we could employ hundreds of thousands and millions of people, and we'd be getting ourselves ready, fit for the future, and also at the same time getting the economy going. So that's what we need to be doing. We need to invest in this locally. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you wonder why there's a cost of living crisis, with people literally struggling to buy food for their children, that's where we are with food banks, which used to be a thing. You know, there used to be the whole blimey, there'll be an occasional food bank. Food banks, you can talk to the vicars of the churches who are running a lot of them in Putney. It's unbelievable the number of people in Putney that are going to food banks right now. The reason why do we have the crisis? Because the Conservative government and the Conservative government reps stand up start talking about interest rates. Oh, well, I'm sure they understand the interest rates when they're queuing up to get yet another can of beans. That's the problem. It's a heartless government and a heartless approach. Now, what would the Lib Dems do? I'll tell you exactly what the Lib Dems do. They would immediately get rid of this two-child benefit cap. It's a cruel and heartless policy. It should be immediately scrapped. Labour has not said it will get rid of it. I honestly don't know why it should. And the Conservatives will keep it because they think it saves them money. How will the Lib Dems raise the money for that windfall tax on the energy companies that are making staggering profits right now? What else would help with the cost of living? Home energy upgrades that will bring down the cost of heating. Utilities are a major, major problem. People are literally deciding whether to turn on the heat or whether to go and buy the food. So if you can bring those prices down, that helps everybody. And of course, and I hope you have a question on this, closer ties to Europe. I hope we talk about Brexit at some point, because that will boost the economy and that will help everybody. Thank you.
So we need a society that encourages people to have children, that welcomes children, that treats them as the beautification of our earth, as the meaning of our life, as the reproduction of our species. And as such, we must provide childcare, creches, and all the facilities required to help raise and encourage and nurture a new generation. And the reason why we've got a cost of living crisis is because the world is controlled by a tiny handful of companies. BlackRock and Vanguard control vast resources across the planet. They control tech, pharma, the military, the banking system, and they utilise their resources on a global scale against the mass of the people of the planet. The truth of the matter is, half of the world earns less than $2 a day. 8 people own more wealth than half of the world's population. And those are dated statistics. Under COVID, resources were transferred to tech and pharma. Under the war in Ukraine, resources were transferred to the military. And there was a collapse in living standard as a consequence of a war that we've got nothing to do with. I do not support the war in Ukraine. I believe we should never have supported it. We should not be arming Ukraine. We should end the war as soon as we can. Thank you.
But I agree we should make a difference here. And the cost of living is critical to everybody in this room. And we must do more about it. The government has got to lead on this. And whichever government we have next has got to lead on that. And it's likely to be a Labour government. And they don't have a good interest rates. They spend more money. They like to bring more people into employment, which is great. And we should, all the main parties are saying we should be doing more to encourage people back into work so they don't have to rely on benefits which are not enough to live on. That's it.
Thank you very much. Can we, and now finally, on the cost of
1 minute on the economy. I think this is absolutely central to this election. We have really got the direction. There's a choice about directions our country will go in. Do we want any more of the Tory economic chaos? You tried to mention Liz Truss crashing the economy and tried to get it out of the way. We can't get it out of the way. It's affecting the money in our pockets every day. We need a new deal for working people. We need to make work pay. So many people are working 2 or 3 jobs, really trying to make ends meet, and still not getting there. We need to make work for people. We need to have green growth, green skills to build the economy through green measures as well, and really kickstart the economy with good growth and stability, investment and reform of our economy. We need to build skills as well and get people back into work by reforming the benefits system. Childcare has been mentioned. Childcare is a huge issue. Labour will start 3,000 new nurseries across the country using many, many school buildings, but also reform our childcare system and reform the benefits system, as I said, and break British energy. So money in our pockets for the amount that energy bills cost. We would start a new energy company to bring the costs of energy down. So we will really tackle the cost of living crisis head on and have a whole new way of looking at this after all of the economic chaos that the Conservatives have brought in. 2-child benefit cap. I personally think that would be make a huge difference to taking children out of poverty. And I'll be lobbying the Labour government if we do get in for that. But also a reform of universal credit, which I've been arguing for reform for since I was a councillor for many, many years.
We do appreciate that this isn't very long for the candidates to answer these really quite fundamental questions. What we're trying to do is to get through as many topics as we possibly can, and I think that's, it's one of, if you like, the price we have to pay. Now, we've had 3 questions on crime, and this will be our next topic. People have raised concerns about phone theft, which happens on the high street from time to time. Break-ins to homes and garages, car and bike theft, knife crime is a huge concern to many residents. So the question to the candidates is, how do you plan to work with the police and to help them tackle these rising crime rates? And would you agree, would the candidates agree that the police should be congratulated on the job that they're doing so far? And we're going to start this with Peter.
Police are an essential part of our community, and we should all support them, but they also have to support us. It's a two-way street. And the government needs to give them the number of officers and the local community officers necessary so they can enforce crime. It's ridiculous that people aren't done shoplifting unless they've stolen 200 things. And that's I watched somebody the other day come in and see what toothpaste. I was going to tackle them, and I needed to know swords out of his bags. I think that's just that. And that's not really the best thing to tackle. So we must support the police. The police must support us, and the government must do more, because crime is essentially a national problem as well as a local problem. And we need sort of well-lit streets and other things to support that, attacking crime. So,
thank you. Please.
Overall, across the country, crime has come down by 54%, which is good in the last few years. But the concern is that London is not one of those areas which is enjoying a decrease in crime. We all know there's been a knife crime epidemic across London. We all know that there are issues that concern us about violence and gangs. I'm clearly very focused on Putney. So I look month by month at the figures that come out. There was a huge spike that came in the 7 or so years up until about 2022, which really concerned me. So I made lots of noise about that. We have a great new superintendent who came in about 12 months ago, called David Bannister, who really is having a great impact on crime. I've seen the figures, and I can go through and bore you up the meeting on how it's going. So I think we are seeing some good signs there. There's a concern I've got though in a couple of areas like Wandsworth Town, which seem to be out of control, both in terms of vehicle theft and also in terms of violent crime, which needs work. My biggest issue is we have put in 6,000 new officers, and we're not seeing those officers being put into Putney or put into the Met, affected by the mayor. So I'm concerned about that. We are still committed to crime, with the 8,000 new officers to go through if we get elected again, and I think this will remain a strong priority for us. So I'm very much keen to see this and work with the police to do that.
Thank you very much indeed.
So, David Bannister is actually no longer in the job, unfortunately. He was very good. He left in March. So there you go, it's up-to-date information for you. The issue is small and large. Local policing is the answer in many respects, and the Met does, in theory, they said it's going to move to local policing, but it does require a bit of political and council pressure to get them to follow through with that plan. A good example, Putney High Street. I was talking to the PCSO for Thamesfield. I live in Thamesfield, and she was saying they were having a shoplifting problem. The problem was that the policy was that the shopkeepers they'd be there within an hour. So basically the shopkeepers have to hold a shoplifter for an hour, and of course most of them were like, this is not worth my time, I'm running a shop. So they had a good discussion because they were having the local police there more often and not being shipped around London, and they said, look, can you move it to 15 minutes? So you shipped it to 15 minutes, made all the difference in the world. Now the shopkeepers will keep hold of somebody for 15 minutes knowing the police have to turn up within that time, and shoplifting plummeted. So that's how local policing works on a very real level. Now, I'm also a member of the, I also volunteer for the Met, and you should all volunteer for the Met as well. It's actually quite interesting. You can choose what you want to do. Not many come to Putney because compared to the rest of London, it's a pretty safe place. But I've been to Battersea quite a lot, I've been to Hampstead a few times, and that's actually really valuable both for you to understand how it works and for the police to understand how you work. And you get to grasp, I'm running out of time, it's impossible, it's 1 minute. Anyway, the answer is national level, local level, we're getting there. It requires political and council pressure to make it better.
It's a double-edged sword with the police at the moment. In the last 5 years, I've been arrested 7 times and compensated by the police for all of those 7 arrests, or awaiting one fine or one compensation. I was arrested for what? I was arrested for walking on the street, for speaking at Speaker's Corner, for riding a bicycle to escape from attacks from people. I was arrested for basically these absurd COVID regulations that were imposed on society without any justification. When there's crime in shops, you can guarantee that a lot of the crime that's taking place is because 1, people are poor, 2, because now you don't have any cashiers, you've got these stupid machines there, and we're trained like dogs to use these machines, or digitisation, and also the mobile phones. People plunder and rob these sort of objects of desire that actually are objects of control over us. And therefore I'm asking that people, and the other aspect to it is that we have to purge the Metropolitan Police of these killers and rapists who are inside there. 800 coppers in the Metropolitan Police, there's not that many of them in the Metropolitan Police, were charged with some kind of serious criminal offence after the Sarah Everard event. So we have to purge the police, make sure they're under democratic control, and the community needs to control policing, and not cameras and not technology.
The Conservatives cut £1 billion out of the Met funding. And that's despite the fact that we fund in the capital so much of the national events. So many of our police are taken over for football policing all the time, and I constantly complain about that. So we need reform of the Met. I'm part of a group of MPs that constantly are very, very tough on the Met. We need reform. We need neighbourhood policing. Labour will bring in 13,000 more police officers across the country and make the retention of our local police officers, where they know, where they build up trust, really important. Policing for women and girls and safety for women and girls on our streets are a real priority for me, and far too few rape cases are actually brought to trial. So Labour will bring in a specialist rape unit in every force and fast-track rape cases, reforming our justice system. We will bring in new penalties as well. There's more information on this in the manifesto, because I've only got 15 seconds left. But crucial to this is also youth clubs, reforming our youth system as well, and stopping ring-fending. And I've done a lot of work about this coming out of Wandsworth Prison, where nothing is done for people in the prison while they're there, so the re-offending rate is far higher than it needs to be. And this is all part of a package of entire reform of our justice system, which is badly needed after being so let down, so cut, so damaged by the Conservatives for 14 years.
So policing, obviously we need police safe streets. I've been arrested 7 times, arrested twice, and my bike taken off me by the police. They managed to arrest 220 of us, they kept us in, and they confiscated all our bikes, and then they lost them. So go figure. So we haven't got trust in police. We have to need to get back to policing. I'm just going to quickly just go over one of the Green Party policies that can actually help, which is actually legalise all drugs. Sounds controversial. They've done it before in Portugal. You treat it as a health emergency, bring people into centres, and you treat them as for drug addiction. Some of the crimes that we have are up to 30 to 40% of all crimes are drug related, also gang related. So if we can tackle the cause, moderate it, bring people in as a medical emergency, and then educate people in our prisons, we can actually see a different type of change happening in society. Thank you.
Well, we're changing subject again now. We have 4 questions on this subject. It's about education and the related issue of tax, VAT, on private school fees. So the question is, where will pupils go if their parents can no longer afford private school fees if VAT is removed? How will the extra school places be facilitated in the funding found? Will VAT be imposed on private tutors? What about increasing provision for children with special educational needs whose parents disproportionately use private schools? What about cathedral choir schools? And a more general question about VAT, would candidates consider imposing VAT on other essentials, such as food, medical care, housing or education, or even university fees? So it's a big question about tax, but it's specific, I think, prompted by the proposal to put VAT on school fees. That's you. So I'm going to start with Claire.
This is a Labour policy, so only fair enough that I go first on this. And politics is about choices. And this is a choice between a tax break for schools where 7% of children in the country go, to supporting the 93% in state schools. The money will go towards mental health provision for every school, so prevention, instead of spending a lot of money and a lot of heartache and pain in mental health provision for those later if it's not treated early enough. And 6,500 more teachers in specialist subjects like music and languages to increase the standards in our schools and start to row back on all of the education cuts that have been brought in. Schools will be able to recover some of that VAT on other expenditures, and the effective rate is likely to be less than 20%. We don't know what it will be, and we don't know how much schools will absorb that money themselves. They've had a lot of time and a forewarning of this policy to come in, so they will be able to do that. Having said that, I've listened to lots of local parents who are worried, and I understand that, and I especially have been raising issues about pupils with special educational needs and our language schools, that wasn't mentioned in the question as well, but what we can do. Small schools won't be able to absorb that cost. It's not a glib response that can be done with this, and I will continue to raise those issues about how this policy is actually implemented. for the next time if a Labour government comes into force. So I will continue to listen to parents. I will continue to put forward their concerns. More broadly, we do need a revolution in our education system and far more investment in our teachers, in our schools across the country.
I take one particular where I think education is very important for everybody. I think it's 7% of the population of education, that's less of a strain on the national system. So I think this is a bad thing. I don't believe the Labour will spend the money wisely elsewhere. I think it's one of many taxes that will come in, and you will all find the cost of living will go up by an average of £15 million, recognizing so £2,000 over 4 years. So it's a bad policy. It's a policy that we don't support.
I use this for a more general question on education. I think there should be lifelong learning for everybody. Everybody should be able to go to study at university, no matter what age they are, and get finance to do so. Just the same as I did when I was 18. I went to university, I got a grant to study at university, I could live on that grant, I could study for free. That's what we need. And once you've got prospects for people, then the whole society changes. As regards private education, I'm in favour of public education, but public education needs to serve the people. Instead of the sort of psychotic lunacy that we have at the moment, where technology is being pushed as a tendency to drive over everything. And that was worst of all in this last 5 years during the COVID crisis, when they made children stay at home in totally unequal situations, when they had totally no risk of passing on any illnesses or catching any illnesses that were going to kill them. It was a complete lie we were sold about this question. They got the whole society at home, destroyed the education system at every single level of society, and then they claim that the technology they used then is now the mechanism for the future. It is not. Education is about people to people.
So I feel a little sorry for Fleur on this one, having to defend a policy which I doubt she personally believes. This will be the first policy of the new Labour government that is either scrapped or reversed, because it's not going to work and it's a terrible idea. The Lib Dems are opposed to taxing education on principle. Not only that, it won't work. What will happen is there will be a huge number of parents who pull their kids out of these schools. They will become too expensive. They will then go into the state sector. They won't know what numbers, they won't know where. It will flood the state sector. And then the money which is apparently going to be raised by this will not appear, and then all the big plans that are based on this won't work, and it will collapse badly. Now, one of the biggest problems with this is there's this sentiment, oh well, if kids are going into private education, then they're somehow pulling out of public education. Well, the truth is it's the other way around. We're talking about choices. The private education provides an additional choice to a singular public education. The reason more parents are putting their kids into private education is because public education is failing. It's giving you choice. That's what the Lib Dems believe, and they believe in choice. Now, what do I think? Should we put a lot more money into public education? Absolutely. It should be a lot better than it is, and we all know it's an embarrassment, and we all know who's to blame for that. So yes, but removing the choice and taxing education is a terrible idea on principle, and it will either be reversed before it happens, or it will be reversed after 5 years of misery for everybody.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so on the VAT, I don't think they should be scrapping the VAT, so that's my personal views. People want to save money to put their children into private education, and taking people out of the educational system. Fair enough. But what we need to be doing, we need to be investing in our schools. We need to be giving teachers pay rises. We need to get rid of the arcane system. Teachers have to study and to sit these exams at such an early age. For what purpose? And tuition fees. I went to university. I didn't pay anything. I was like thinking, what am I going to do with my life? Kids now go to school, they come out, go to university, and they got 30, 40, 50,000 pounds worth of debt, and all they can think about is then trying to support themselves. They can't think about the bigger pictures, and then force them to a capitalist system that's not going to support them in the future.
Education is one of our great success stories of the last 14 years. What? Oh, it is. No. Look at the International PISA ratings. Under Labour, it got worse, under Conservatives, it got better. In 2009, we were 25th in the world for reading. Now we are 13th. Same thing, 27 to 11, when it comes to maths. This has been a success story, which Labour wants to remove and take away. Now, what I'm saying to you now very quickly is let's take Wales. Wales is the one place in the country where Labour are running things. It's also the worst in the UK for reading, and below the rest of the OECD on average. That's quickly about what we've done in education. Now, what's been talked about for VAT is appalling. This is Labour as they really are now. The politics of envy. Now here, in Wandsworth, 23% of people send their children to independent schools. So it's an embarrassment flow. She's embarrassed about this. This will make choice disappear for people who can't afford it. It will push more children into state education. How can we absorb that? It's impossible. This will have to be repealed. It's terrible.
Thank you very much. We've got a very different question coming up now. And I think it's prompted in part by a recent survey that was released on the called British Social Attitudes. It's an annual survey, and where 79% of people are dissatisfied with the way that the UK is governed. So the question, we've had 3 questions on this topic, and this is about proportional representation. And as a result of first past the post, which is our current system, a party can win a large majority with about 40% of the popular vote. It's equally possible the party receiving 15 or less % of the popular vote will end up with a few or even no MPs at all. Is this fair? How we can change this to make our voting system fairer? If PR is good enough for Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland and even the London Assembly, why not for the UK as a whole? So this, we're going to keep this off with Phil.
Yeah, we wouldn't have this pantomime politics that's going on because we have the Europe. You think about it, you've got Nigel Farage screaming from the outside, managing to actually influence how we've actually run this country. And then you have Greens, nearly 1 million votes, we get 1 MP. So we have to look, we've got a broken system. It's arcane, it needs to be changed. We've got to build the House of Lords, we need to bring in citizens' assemblies, we need to bring in PR, proper proportional representation. There's only 2 countries in Europe that has first past the post. So UK and Belarus. You think about it, what time we actually start changing our political system. And if we don't, what's going to happen is we're always going to have Labour and Conservatives. They're always going to say the same thing. It goes, oh, you need to vote Labour, so you have to get Conservative votes. They have to go, oh, you have to vote Conservatives, you got Labour out. And we're doing the same thing every single time. We need to bring in new people into politics. That's why young people don't vote anymore. They've lost complete faith in the system. And people swapping votes. What kind of democracy do we have? People tactically vote, swap votes, and don't even turn up to the voting stations. So 100% we need proportional representation. I hope you'll bring this and push it. Genuinely, we'll actually push it this time around because we need reform. Thank you.
I do support having reform. I am really glad that when Labour comes in, it will have a commission and look into all of these issues of our voting system, but also how reform of the House of Lords. We pledged to reform the House of Lords. We started doing it when we were in power last. We're going to finish the job now. And also look at devolution and more of the power going down to areas and regions of our country so that we're closer to the decision making that we have. We have a mayor and differently elected as the London Assembly. So we elect it by a direct amount for Merton and Wandsworth is directly assembled and then topped up by votes. So all of our votes count in that election. And the world hasn't stopped, it's all been fine, and actually we get much more democratic representation. So I will be working for much better democratic representation, but also standards in our public life really, really matter. We will bring in an independent integrity commission and we will stop second jobs for MPs. We really need to clean up our politics after the last few years of them being absolutely brought into the gutter. And Labour is committed to do that as well, if we are elected.
that's the Nolan Principles of Public Life. There's 7 of them,
Yep.
and I'm sure all the candidates will know them off by heart. So next, no, I'm not going to test you, sorry. Next, Heiko, on PR.
I'm not opposed to PR, but the fundamental question of power is slightly different to that. Power is exercised by global economic interests. On a national basis, you have the representatives of them and some national economic actors. They lobby government and tell them pretty much what to do. They can pick between one or the other. The reality is Parliament is a talking shop to represent the interests of big business. And whether Labour's in power or the Tories in power, 2 cheeks of the same arse, as we say, that's what's going to happen. They will represent the same people. And therefore the way to challenge that goes right back to the levelist debates that took place here in 1647, where they said, if we have the right to vote, if we have all human beings treated as rational representatives or people created by God, able to exercise their power, then they will ask the question, does property control or do the people control? That's the real question. Could be, but I can remember.
Okay, we've a slight change of tone now. We've got Kieran, and I can't begin to guess what he's got to say.
So proportional representation is the Lib Dems thing. My goodness. If you go to a Lib Dem conference, you can be there for hours. And it's not just PR, it's the multiple different types of PR, and you can talk for a long time about why you go for this one, why you go for that one. So yes, PR in favour of it. Why? Because the system we have right now is so archaic and old and outdated. And I'll just explain why. We are going to have a massive Labour majority in 2 weeks' time, probably the same vote share as they had under Jeremy Corbyn. That's just the madness of it. It doesn't work. It distorts every part of our politics. And it works it's everywhere in the world. They've gone, this system was really bad. We don't need to do it anymore. Let's change it. So in Wales you have it, in Scotland you have it, in London we had it and then it was changed from the mayor, but hopefully we'll get it back. It's a system that works, it's a system that is sane, and it will make our politics work a lot better. So we should simply do it. I'll also throw in, I like it because I won a board seat on this organisation runs .uk nominate through PR, and I lost on the total votes, then won afterwards, because frankly I was the better candidate, and more people thought I should do the role. And so you end up with better people that reach across the aisle more, and then that's the people that get into power, and those are the people you want making your laws and talking to one another. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, obviously, I'll take a dissenting voice here, which may not be unpopular, but I will. My biggest concern about what's being proposed here is the breakdown between the elected person and the person they're representing. Now, I remember going out a few weeks ago on GLA elections, explaining to people how the voting works and what the GLA representative was all about. It confused people. They didn't understand it, about that extra ballot about having the party list. This gets more confusing and runs the risk of actually pushing people away from democracy. The strongest thing we have in this country, I think, is an MP or a councillor who represents you. You can go to them, not some faceless party-nominated bureaucrat, which is what we have arguably in the GLA, arguably in Europe, when we had that. So I'm very, very concerned about constitutional change for the sake of it. We have to always maintain the principle of representation. So if you have a problem, you can go to somebody. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I want to be your rep, to go and be your champion. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about shady backroom deals between parties that you know nothing about. Look at Europe. It's appalling in that sense. So I am very worried, always up for looking at ideas, but I'm worried about losing the fundamental sense of you have a representative, you know who they are, you can go and speak to them, and not have a faceless power battle taking place.
Thank you. Proportional representation in one way.
But I agree we need some reform, and in favour of some proportional representation, because as you said, at the moment you will end up with a huge Labour majority, regulated by 40% of the people, which means that the other 60% are largely disenfranchised. especially the rest of the world, is way good enough. And it needs to make a difference. There needs to be some reform of housing laws. I think it's one of the system of 1992 elected, it can be more electable and elected. So I'm in favour of that as well. And I think my final point is that I think we do need, whatever the government is, the next one we get, we do need a better opposition. You need to be part of that. So therefore, because it's going to be a big Labour government, you definitely need a more Labour MP next time.
Thank you very much. Right, now we're good. Very much another change of subject, and we've had multiple questions on this. And the question quite simply is, what is your party's policy towards ending the conflict in Gaza, supporting an immediate ceasefire and supporting a two-state solution? And we're going to start with Lee on this one.
This is one of those areas that both the Conservatives and Labour are very similar on this. Difference is that we don't have a damage limitation exercise which Fleur has. I mean, look, I tend to go with the view that Cameron's putting forward, which is to be quite critical, the most critical of all the Western leaders of Israel. I started this situation pre-October the 7th, naturally supporting a fellow democracy, which is what Israel is. But clearly what's happened, having been goaded into the most horrific situation, they've acted even more horrifically, which is never the way to go. I remember Biden said at the time, don't be coaxed into acting as we did after 9/11. And what we now have is Israel's become an international embarrassment for our state. So clearly we want to get a solution which is going to be the conflict ending and also the establishment long term of a two-state solution. But clearly we don't want to have Hamas having a leading party because they are ultimate terrorists, they're behind all this, and clearly we're concerned about that. So that's our view.
So I actually got the Green Party statement on this. Green Party called for an immediate ceasefire to stop all arms trades from the UK to Israel, to hold all people who are involved in conflict on both sides accountable in the international courts of justice. We're calling for a boycott against the Israeli government. And furthermore, we're calling to stop the collective punishment that's actually happening now. It is an absolute disgrace that this country is supporting a war.
Well, thank you very much. Kieran.
We keep being asked this, and I don't answer it. It's heartbreaking. I don't know. I mean, you can choose to look away, you can choose to look at it. It's horrifying. But let's talk about politics. The Lib Dems were the people that stood first and almost immediately calling for a ceasefire, not a humanitarian pause. Remember all the humanitarian pause requests, and that's come from experience. The Lib Dems think about these things a little more clearly, I would say, and I think that was proven, if you remember, during the Iraq War. The Lib Dems were very clear, and it proved to be entirely correct approach on this. I wish Layla Moran was here. Layla Moran, I think, is the only MP that had family in Gaza, and she does a fantastic job of explaining this far better than I ever would. The Lib Dems, yes, the two-state solution is the only way forward right now. Of course it is. It breaks my heart to see what's going on. There's only so much we can do, but we should be doing as much as we possibly can. We are on the UN Security Council, and that is the way that we can influence this discussion. And that's where I stand. An immediate ceasefire, and there's no good that's come out of this at all. It's all good.
Gaza illustrates the barbarism which our society is now producing. 100,000 people injured or maimed, something like 40,000 people killed, 70% of them women or children. This is barbarism, financed and supported by Britain, America and Europe. The so-called democracy, which reveals that the march of democracy is a fraud, which is what I've been trying to explain during the course of this meeting, of this Hustings today. We have a fraudulent system of power in which, when the real face is revealed, barbarism appears. Keir Starmer, with his woodenness, his frozenness, his inability to take a position on anything, is one thing he takes a position on. Is absolute support for Israel, no matter what they do. No matter what he says, oh, we support ceasefire, we support two-state, we support Palestine. He does not support Palestine. He supports the Israel lobby. And anyone who claims, these people who claim that they're defending the rights of the people, the truth of the matter is, Israel and Palestinians must live as one people with equal rights in a single state, not in a second state like a concentration camp, which is what people are proposing the two-state solution in reality.
It's a terrible situation. And speaking as a soldier who's involved in a lot of these types of conflicts, there is never a military solution. And we saw that in Northern Ireland, where eventually we needed a solution at the Valley Coast. The 7th of October, drama was falling, but what's been going on since has gone far too far. I think the solution is incredibly difficult. Greater minds and arms across the whole of the Middle East, including the solution was put forward by Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all supporting this two-state solution because they thought and think that it will produce a better solution for the Palestinian people, and who's to know whether their lives will work. With this conflict going on as it is, all that happens is we're driving 2 million people into being more supportive of Hamas and terrorism than in refusing it. So we must stop, we must have a ceasefire, and we must produce a solution that's good, and I'm afraid it mustn't include Hamas.
I'm really glad we've got a question on this because I'm really concerned that as the election is being called, the eyes of the media here in our country, we're not hearing what's going on in Rafah, the assault on Rafah, and what's going on in Gaza, which is horrific and getting worse and worse and worse, as if it even could get worse. I was there on the West Bank and in Israel the week before October 7th because I've been campaigning for Palestinian rights and for peace in the region for a long, long time. And I went back again in February with Leila Moran and a cross-party delegation to hear those voices for peace within the region as well. So Labour supports a ceasefire, the release of the hostages, an end of disproportionate use of force, the end of the arms sales to the region, and international law to be upheld. International law is suffering as a result of this, which will also have consequences for other conflicts. We support a surge of aid and the end of the settler illegal occupation on the West Bank. Recognition of the state of Palestine, which I asked in Biden's question time to the Prime Minister.
Nice.
A long-term peace for a two-state solution, which is needed in the region. I will be there arguing and fighting for that in the long term. But I also support the end of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in our communities, which this House raised up as well, and I've worked a lot with our religious communities to end that as well and to support unity here as well as the two-state solution and long-term peace in the region.
We're on the last question. We're just about keeping to timing. You've been, I think to use what they say on the radio, you used stamina. This is our 11th question. It's a huge topic, and we've had a number of questions on this actually. It is about climate change. How would the parties address the decarbonization of domestic energy use, particularly given the expense of retrofitting older houses, and given that the climate emergency has been declared both by the government and many local councils, including Oxford, what policies do you advocate to address this existential threat? The kick us off on this issue of climate change is
The subjects that the greatest numbers are of major importance, both nationally and locally, because climate change is affecting all of us. We notice this with the increasing temperature, the rising
climate change is clearly an important thing which is changing our world, and it's something which we've been focused on. In fact, Mrs. Thatcher was the first person to highlight this as a chemist, so often the point is forgotten. And we are facing potential global disaster, which is affecting things like migration. We see that coming to us from the Middle East and from Africa, and it's affecting all of our lives. So clearly, every single party has to tackle this as a global solution and consider carefully what the impact will be on all of us. Climate change is something we have to do in our homes and have to consider carefully how we use energy. On the counter view, it's expensive. Like the things we're discussing tonight, and this is more than just a party issue, it's expensive. It's going to be expensive in how we pay for this, how we pay for this in our cars, how we pay for this in our transport systems, and also how we adapt to transport with going abroad and things like that, and also our boilers. So I'm cautious about how much we spend on this, whether we overdo this in terms of what we spend as a nation, but clearly have to make sure that we are addressing the issue and not finding ourselves facing even bigger disasters later.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I actually take this kind of personally. About 5 years ago, I was living in California, and I don't know whether you're aware, we have fairly regular wildfires over in California. We're really open. And we had them, I think, 3 years in a row. Is that right? My wife. And we had friends of ours who had to literally evacuate their houses. Fortunately, none of them lost their houses. But literally, the fire brigade will turn up at 2 in the morning, so you've got 15 minutes to grab anything in your house and get out of it. And that's happened to friends of ours, and we'd ring round and say, you can come and stay with us. And then there would be huge, I don't know whether you ever saw it, it was like a Blade Runner sky one morning. It was literally orange. We got up in the morning, it was the weirdest thing, the birds weren't singing. It was orange, and there was this intense smell of unpleasant barbecue. And it was houses burning, it was horrific. So I've experienced what is coming in a very real way. And by the way, our house is made entirely of wood, because you're in an earthquake zone, so you can't make it out of brick. And the house is just going like that. It's coming, and it's getting worse. And until you experience it in a very real terms, you don't realise how important it is. So it really is important. Now, policy-wise, the Lib Dems, I ran over already my personal story. Very quickly. The Lib Dems were responsible for the wind power we've actually got in this country, and the Conservatives stopped that. And the Lib Dems bring it up to 90% by starting that whole programme up again. Net zero by 2045, the fastest of all of the major, probably the Greens, I would say, probably tomorrow if they can do it. And then upgrade houses, the 10-year plan upgrade houses that will massively help, and lift restrictions on solar and wind. That will all help. Thanks.
The idea that the climate is changing in some catastrophic form, as far as I can make out, having studied the question for some time now, is a corporate fraud. It's a corporate fraud. That doesn't mean climate doesn't change. Climate change is always. And climate mitigation is important because we have to be worried about floods, we have to be worried about disasters, we have to be worried about volcanoes. I had a girlfriend who was killed in an earthquake. These things happen. And they're terrible things to happen, and we need to mitigate those things. But there is a fraudulent campaign by an international lobby to present CO2, which is the gas of life, as a poison that destroys the Earth. The reality is, all life on Earth is entirely dependent on CO2. And for them to have turned CO2 into an enemy illustrates how mad the world has become.
I do not deny the impact of climate change, and I do not deny that we are one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. Under the last Labour government, we were doing a lot to take action on the environment, and that as soon as we hit 2010, it went go slow, and we have suffered for 14 years because of that. We've got a lot of catching up to do. I was an environmental campaigner, as I've said, before I became an MP, and I have made it my mission to take action on the environment as an MP. I set up the Putney Environment Commission as well 4 local people to get involved about local issues, national issues and international issues. We hold regular meetings on different issues. Labour will bring in Great British Energy, powered by renewable energy. We will bring in a national wealth fund for green jobs. We will hold water companies to account for the sewage disaster we have, the water crisis across the country. We will block the bonuses of water bosses and bring in criminal charges. We will bring in warm homes and insulation. The Tories scrapped the Green Homes Grant after about 3 months of chaotic bringing it in, but warm homes grants will bring down our energy bills as well. We will also restore natures with millions more trees and 3 national forests and expand nature-rich wetlands and peat bogs. There's so much to be done. Do read the Labour manifesto because there are green policies written through it, which is absolutely the way it must be.
Question. We have one candidate left to speak on it. It is magically verbal.
Okay, it's a quick question, 1 minute. Let's go. What we need to do is we need to reverse the ban on onshore wind, which is the cheapest form of energy in the UK, 4 or 5 times cheaper than nuclear. We need to quadruple the deployment of renewable energy. We need to change the planning to actually speed up the deployments. It can take 3 to 13, 14 years to get grid connection for solar and wind projects in the UK. We need to work on interconnectors. We need to bring in frequent flyer taxes. We need to actually bring in carbon taxes as well. So if people want to fly, we tax them and we can invest that money into a national home installation program. We've got 21 million houses to retrofit. Okay, we need to be getting on with that. If we retrofitted all the homes with heat pumps, solar thermal, solar PV, we'd actually save about a quarter of all the energy that we actually spend to foreign dodgy companies. On top of that, we need to look at transport. We need to bring in cheap, sustainable urban transport for everybody that's reliable and safe. And on top of that, we've got hard-to-abate industries, which is like steel, ammonia processing, shipping, aviation. And we need to take a big, long look at these and start bringing in things like green arc furnaces and actually reducing the amount of consumption that we're using for steel and cement in the first place. So we've got lots of things to do. I'm a little bit shocked about you said lots of great things tonight on your views of anti-science. I just recommend you to read sorry, yeah, and just I'd like to say, this is why we need to vote green, because the more people vote green, the more our policies get listened to, and more we can influence governments on the decisions that are needed for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the candidates, and thank you all for being a great audience. We've got now, each candidate is going to make a closing statement, and that will bring the Hustings to a conclusion. I should say that we received in total, we've only been through 11 questions. It may feel like more, but it was only 11. We received 38 questions. What we plan to do is to make those anonymous, so that give them out to all of the candidates, but without it being obvious who's actually sent the question in. And if any of you here did actually write in the question and you wanted specifically one of the candidates to address that, you can let me know afterwards, and then we can make arrangements for that to take place. But we think it's important because so many people took the trouble to write these questions out. The candidates see all of them, not just the selection that we've been running through this evening. So now we're coming to the final stages. It's 2 minutes per candidate. They will summarise it, and in fact, the focus, we hope, will be on why we should vote for them. And we're going to start off with
Thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. And if you didn't feel the question was answered, please do write to me. You might well see me on the doorstep. I'm going all over Putney, Roehampton, Southlands and Wandsworth Town at the moment. And that's the kind of MP that I try to be. Really, really accessible. I have surgeries every Friday, and I've had a whole series of community 2 days as well, and I've brought people in to talk about the issues we've got with other community organisations. You have a clear choice at this election. Here in Putney and across the whole constituency, it's always been between Labour or the Conservatives. We have, in the last 20 years, we've had 15 years of Conservatives here in Putney, but I think they've had their chance. We don't want 5 more years of this Tory chaos. We don't want 5 more years of cuts to our public services and increasing NHS waiting lists. We don't want 5 more years of the kind of serving us that have given us Partygate, COVID cronyism, the Rwanda bill, endless amounts of policies that just don't work for our country. Instead, we need to have a Labour government with new standards, a new direction, a new sense of stability. That in itself would be a change. Labour's different economic approach will mean a more active and smarter government with reform of the economy, of the housing that's so important for us in our area, and the skills that we need to drive ourselves forward as a country. We will have 10 years of economic renewal. A 10-year programme for government is what we need after this lurching from policy to policy that we've had. We've got clear first steps. Do read the Labour manifesto on NHS, on crime, on schools and childcare, bringing down our energy bills, and taking action on climate change and saving nature. We have policies to make our community better. We will bring in Great British Energy, Great British Railways and National Care Service. There are many other issues we have to talk about. But above all, I will keep campaigning with you, being an empowering MP, being a community MP, to work with you to save our park in Southfields, but also our shops here and our NHS. I would be honoured, absolutely honoured, if you would vote for me. I take no vote for granted, and I will seek to earn every one of your vote. And if you give me the opportunity to serve you, thank you very much indeed.
Well, as you've heard, we've got some great candidates in front of you. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your very great questions, covering many of the subjects. I'm sorry you didn't mention Roehampton. That's not really one of my great problems, which was in the Hustings yesterday. I'm very glad that Phil mentioned the word reform in her speech, because you said that we're actually struggling there, and that's very good, and we now have a So we've got a new leader in Nigel. He's one of the better leaders that we have in the West. You have a choice. The choice is that you have. We live in democracy. So make sure you make use of your democratic rights and vote. And for those of you who have registered your vote today, you can do it online, you have to do it by midnight tonight. Don't waste your vote. You've got to vote. You've bothered to come here tonight. So the 5% of you who have voted today, please do so. And of course, then vote for this colour when you see those who vote. So you've got a choice. I would also like to work with you and be your hard-working MP. I've not got another job, so this is my sole occupation to come and help you. We'll work with Putney, Wandsworth, Roehampton, and the whole constituency. So I need your support. And support the NHS. I want to make it better, we want to put more money in it. And I've just got lots of ideas. We need a sensible opposition. The Conservatives will not provide that. And so please register your vote and vote for reform.
Thank you very much, Peter. Now, up to 2 minutes.
I want to mention something that hasn't come up today, and that's the thing that really affected us all in the last 5 years. The first thing that happened after Boris Johnson was elected was the crisis over so-called COVID pandemic. The reality is, and I'm an expert on Chinese studies, I've got a PhD in Chinese studies, I've followed very carefully what happened. You can look on the website putneyworkers.org and you'll see a link to my Substack where I went into great detail, and it's even being read by the chief pandemic, guy in charge of the pandemic response in China. He's reading the document I'm writing. I also did an interview with Wolfgang Borach, the guy who exposed the swine flu pandemic. as an international corporate fraud, and that was accepted by the European Union at their 2010 meeting by 58 votes to 2. They accepted that the swine flu was a fraud carried out by Big Pharma, mobilising the WHO and manipulating them for their own interests. And it was Paul Flynn, a Labour MEP, who exposed this in the European Parliament. All that was forgotten when COVID came along, and suddenly the whole world, under command of a pandemic preparation network run by Bill Gates, SETI, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, who control the finances of WHO, imposed a totalitarian dictatorship on most of the world for a period on and off of 2 years. And that dictatorship, it fuzzled our minds up. We were scared to hug our mother, scared to be with your children, scared to walk on the streets. That psychological manipulation of society is the worst crime that's been committed in modern times. And it is that has prepared society to accept the barbarism, one of the war in Ukraine, and second now of the ultimate destruction of humanity, and that is the barbarity that we are seeing in Gaza, supported by the Tories and backed by the Labour Party. We must stand up against this, begin to take control of it. I don't expect you to agree with everything I say. On the contrary, I want you to disagree with what I say, whereas they want you to agree and nudge you to agree with everything they say. And everything they say in reality is to serve the interests of a tiny handful of capitalist companies that have seized control of the world. People need control themselves over society.
Kieran, 2 minutes, please, or even less.
Words follow that spring to mind. Okay. Yes, so I've actually really enjoyed this. I hope you'll have too. I thought it was really good questions. I have loved being on these Hustings and hearing the different views, even though I don't agree with some opinions. If you want to talk to me, you can actually book me online. I'm easy to find. I've actually set up a system where I can say, I would like you to come around my house and talk to me. Feel free to look me up, feel free. We're running out of time, it's not too far away, but feel free to do that. You do have a choice this election, and I hate to bring up some of the negatives, but you have a choice of a man who was insulting towards the Mayor of London, said he had done more damage to London than the Luftwaffe. I actually don't find that very funny at all. My parents were in London during the Blitz. I don't make jokes about the Luftwaffe. Or you could choose a woman who has had 5 years, but the high street is a mess, the bridge is still closed. If you could have done it by now, you would have done it by now, and I wouldn't be minded to do another 5 years, I'll be honest. And I hate to bring it up, but you did have an opportunity to do what was right, and go with what you say is your own conscience, and you did abstain from Gaza ceasefire vote. That's a fact. If you stand for me, I will stand by my principles and values, which I think are your principles and values too. You can vote for a party that is going to win and is going to dominate our politics for the next 5 years, and you'll have yet another Labour MP who will be obliged to follow the line. Or you can vote for a party which is a national laughingstock, let's be honest, that's where we are, with a Prime Minister who skipped out of D-Day celebrations. Or you can vote for a party that is already established and thriving in all of our neighbourhoods, in Richmond, in Twickenham, in Kingston, and very soon in Wimbledon. If you vote for me, I will save the high street, I will open that bridge, I will bring some sanity to the housing, I will work with the police to bring down crime, and I will do it thoughtfully, I will do it openly, I will do it firmly, and I will do it with all of you in mind. So on the 4th of July, vote for a better Putney and vote for me. Thank you.
2 minutes, okay. 2 minutes sometimes means 3. Yeah, look, you've heard very different points of view here. Some good, some bad, some a bit strange, to be honest with you. But the reason we need to vote Green is we've got no choice, right? We're running out of time. This next Parliament that we're going to be sitting in is that 5 years we have to put in long-term plans for decarbonising our economy. And what we need to have is people who understand the gravity of the situation that we're in. I've got a master's in renewable energy. I've been working in sustainable for over 15 years. We talk about climate change for over 20 years. Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, done all the different protesting you can do. But if you can have some good, strong voices in Parliament talking reason and science and engineering to steer the country where we need to be going, that's why we need to be voting Green in this election. It's a safe election. All the polls show that Labour are going to have a runaway. So the more people who vote Green, the more our policies will get listened to, and we need to start having very honest conversations, because if we wait for another Parliament or two, we're not going to have the kind of future that we want our children to have. So vote for me, 4th of July, and we'll make a difference for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. I love it when Liberals get moral and take the moral high ground, because they always talk about us all being sleazy. And I always say that this is the party which was in rehab for 9 years because they couldn't have an expensive coalition with us. That's the issue. They always talk about the high things, they don't give any real solutions. But this is the party which has given us so many questionable moral figures in the last 50 years, like Cyril Smith, like Jeremy Thorpe, like Nick Clegg, who now takes the Facebook doll. Ed Davey goes around the country playing in theme parks to distract from the fact that he ignored Alan Bates during the postal stand. That's the simple issue. Now, let's talk about the parties that can really take power here. You've got a choice coming up. You will have, probably, so we're told, from the polls, a Labour government with a large majority. This won't be like Tony Blair, which is basically a soft left-wing Tory government. This will be a proper old-fashioned 1970s Labour government, committed to nationalised industry, higher taxation, and not being honest with you as well. They've already posed one thing. We've talked about the VAT on private schools. That's full of holes, as we can all see, affecting us in Putney. Who's going to shout up for you? Who's going to stand up for Putney? It won't be Fleur. She'll be an apologist, as she has been for the last few years with the mayor. All the issues about the bus cuts. You know, we know about the 40 and the 74 being saved, but you know what? That wasn't Fleur. That was the mayor playing a game with us, blackmailing us to get more money from the government. The government bailed him out in August and September, and then in November he let the buses go. It's happening now with the 85 bus. We've got to stand up against the mayor. Fleur won't do that. You need somebody who's independent, who'll stand up against the government, the national government, the mayor, and the local council. In this room here, there are people that have been affected by that local government with their dictatorial policies about infield. Now, who was the person that went out there and fought with you, that got the petitions together? Who's the person who didn't turn up for a photo shoot, then disappeared when the going got rough, which some politicians did in this room, or came in late to the party, talking about stuff, making a video like a Morrissey tribute act, which said nothing? I was there with you. I was there with you, getting that together and fighting the council and disposing his, I'm talking with Jeremy Ambach here, his colleague who couldn't handle the pressure because they were there defending a policy that people didn't want. So I will always stand up for you and use my passion, experience and creativity and not take the party line and fight for you and fight for Putney.
I misled you slightly because we could have one more closing statement. Phil Fulbury, who's been very patiently sitting there. He's representing the joint EU party, so he's going to get the final 2 minutes, and then you're all free to go.
But we did notice that none of the candidates mentioned Brexit. None of them tried to deny the statistics that I gave earlier on. And what we're talking about is not...
give any statistics, and you were actually...
Let him speak.
Sorry, you missed the statistics that I did, which came from Bloomberg and the National Audit Office and the Mayor's Office, which is Every one of these people, every one of the people in this place has lost £3,400 as a result of Brexit, and it is a continuing problem. And we can deal with it. Now, The Economist last week produced their report of people's opinions on Brexit. 70% of the country now regret it. 70%, and most of the others are worried about it. Isn't that something we should be thinking about? Our candidates are frightened of it. The only one who's mentioned, unfortunately, is the Brexit Party themselves, who have renamed themselves. We talk about Brexit as the opportunity of a lifetime. That is an insult. That is an insult to all of us. It's an opportunity. 8 years later, not a single green shoot for opportunities in Britain. We can go back into Europe. Europe wants us to go back. I believe that probably our MP wants us to go back. I have a strong suspicion that most of the new Labour MPs want us to go back. We have the opportunity of giving them the courage. They don't like the idea of saying we are maybe defying what was a national referendum. We need to give them the courage to say, let's reconsider. Now, the winner of this election is already settled. I'm just saying, please, if we could give a big vote to our rejoin the EU candidate here, it will send a message to the new government. Think again.
Thank you very much. We are now drawing to a close, and that's my phone is interfering with my microphone. We've overrun slightly this evening. It's almost entirely my fault. There are one or two people here who don't understand how long 2 minutes is, even though we had a timekeeper. But never mind. Thank you very, very much to everybody. And as Peter pointed out, we've got till midnight if we haven't already registered to vote. And the other thing I would just remind you all is check your voter ID, because you will need to take someone when you go to vote. And don't do a Boris Johnson and turn up the wrong person. So, well, it didn't happen. On that point, I'm going to close our rector is here, and he is. He will make a very brief closing statement. But thank you to all of you for coming along, spending the whole evening listening to our six candidates. And please, can you say thank you, show your appreciation to the candidates for their contribution.
Every day when I walk into this church, I'm aware that we've got such an incredible building from the generosity of our forebears, and I'm always wanting to use it for the well-being and to contribute to social capital of this community. So it's been absolutely thrilled that we've been able to have this stunning event with our wonderful candidates, our Putney Society, putting in so much work, and really glad we were able to do so. So a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we overran.
See you later, guys. Goodbye from me and goodbye from him. It's a live stream. So, see you later.